I was 25 years old, and most days I woke up with the same dull ache in my chest. Jobless, drifting, watching time slip by while my friends race ahead into lives that looked so much shinier than mine. I didn't like admitting it, but I carried a kind of vanity inside me, too. I knew I was handsome. People told me so often. My reflection in mirrors reminded me of that. But what good was beauty when you had nothing else to offer? No career, no car, no independence. Handsome or not, I felt invisible in a world that measured worth by what you carried in your pocket, and not just coins or notes, by the glowing Apple logo everyone seemed to flaunt. The iPhone 17 had become more than just a phone to me. It was a symbol. Owning it would mean I wasn't behind, that I could stand shoulder to shoulder with the people who always seemed one step ahead. Every time I saw one in someone's hand, sleek and shining, it felt like a mirror reflecting what I lacked. I imagined myself holding it, the way people's eyes would linger on me a little longer, maybe with respect, maybe with envy. But when I saw the price, it felt like staring at a mountain I could never climb. Money was scarce, too scarce. I had no job, no savings, and my parents had long since stopped believing my promises that things would get better. My friends teased me, too, half joking, half serious. You're handsome enough to charm your way into anything, but charm doesn't pay the bills. I laughed with them, but inside, the words cut deeper than they realized. That morning, I walked into a small mobile shop tucked into a busy street. The glass counters glittered with cases, chargers, and the very devices I dreamed of. My heart pounded harder than it should for something as simple as a phone, but I was desperate. I asked the shopkeeper about the iPhone 17, my voice catching between confidence and pleading. He looked me up and down, not with scorn, but with a curious kind of calculation. Then he smirked, leaning forward on the counter. You really want one, don't you? Yes, I admitted too quickly. More than anything right now. But it's impossible for me. He tapped his finger on the counter, his smile widening. Maybe not impossible. Not if you're willing to listen to me. There was something strange in his tone. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Hope has a way of blinding you, of silencing the voice of reason in your head. I leaned closer. What do you mean? There's someone, he said slowly, almost as if testing me. A man who can get it for you. No cost. No installment plans. Straight into your hands. I blinked. No cost? You mean free? Nothing in this world is truly free, he replied with a shrug. But yes, you'll get what you want. He's, let's just say, generous. And he doesn't give everyone his time. But you? He gestured at me, at my face, my stance. You might be exactly what he'd like. A shiver ran through me. Who is he? The shopkeeper lowered his voice, though no one else was in store. An Arab sheikh. He's in town, visiting for hunting. Wealthy beyond anything you can imagine. He's my friend, and I've seen what he does for people he takes a liking to. Phones, cars, even opportunities. He could give you more than just an iPhone if you let him. I froze. Part of me wanted to laugh it off. This sounded like one of those urban legends whispered in marketplaces. But the shopkeeper's eyes held no mischief, only a sharp certainty. What would he want from me? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. The man leaned back, folding his arms. He's lonely. He doesn't say it out loud, but I know. He enjoys company, conversation, someone to sit with him, make him feel seen. That's it. Nothing more unless you choose. But he will not hurt you. He doesn't need to. He has everything except connection. My throat tightened. This was madness. I should walk away. Yet there was something magnetic about the possibility, about being chosen by someone so powerful, so unlike the world I knew. And then there was the phone, always the phone, dangling like a prize just out of reach. The shopkeeper studied me. I can take you to him. Right now, if you want. He's camped near the river, where the hunting grounds are. Say the word. I hesitated, my heart hammering. I imagined walking away, returned to my bare room, my empty pockets, my endless excuses. And then I imagined stepping forward into something unknown, something dangerous maybe, but alive with possibility. My voice came out quieter than I intended. Take me? The shopkeeper's smile widened, satisfied. Good choice. You won't regret it. As I followed him out of the shop and onto the noisy street, my nerves tangled with curiosity. I didn't know what awaited me by the riverside, only that my life, for better or worse, was about to change. The ride to the riverside felt longer than it probably was. The shopkeeper led me out of the city's tangled streets, past the noise of vendors calling, past the smell of fried snacks drifting from stalls, past everything that was familiar to me. Slowly, the air changed. The scent of dust gave way to damp soil. The sound of rickshaws faded into silence, and soon the wide expanse of the river opened before my eyes. It was beautiful, strangely so. The water shimmered in the late afternoon light, catching streaks of gold and silver, while reeds swayed along the banks. A cluster of hunting tents stood a little further inland, white fabric pinned against the breeze, like sails from another world. Beside them, dark SUVs gleamed, their tinted windows making them seem more like shadows than machines. Men in long robes and crisp uniforms stood guard, quiet but alert, as if nothing could surprise them. My steps slowed without my permission. I wasn't supposed to be here. I felt it in every fiber of me. I was just a boy with empty pockets, walking into the camp of someone who lived like a king. My heart thudded, louder than the river's rush. The shopkeeper glanced at me, smirking faintly. Don't look so nervous. He's kind. Just remember that. I wanted to believe him, but my palms were slick with sweat. And then I saw him. The Sheikh stepped out from between the tents, tall and composed, dressed in flowing white that caught the sunlight in a way that seemed almost unreal. He carried himself like someone who had never once doubted his place in the world, like someone who belonged everywhere he went. But it wasn't his clothes or his presence alone that caught me. It was his eyes, warm, steady, watching me not with disdain, not with amusement, but with something I couldn't quite name. I felt small under his gaze, yet not unwanted. My breath caught as he walked closer, the sound of his sandals soft against the earth. This is the one I told you about, the shopkeeper said, his voice breaking the silence. The Sheikh nodded slowly, his eyes still on me. He didn't speak right away, and for some reason that silence felt heavier than words. When he finally did speak, his voice was low, steady, carrying an accent that curved every syllable. You came. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, almost like he already knew I would. I swallowed hard. Yes. For a moment, his lips curved into the faintest smile. Then, with a casualness that startled me, he reached into his robe and pulled out a sleek, unopened box, the iPhone 17. He held it out to me like it was nothing, like it wasn't worth months of wages, like it wasn't the very thing I had been dreaming about for weeks. Take it, he said simply. I froze. My eyes darted from the phone to his face. This was too easy, too unreal. I hadn't done anything, hadn't proven anything, and yet here it was, the prize, the dream. My hand trembled as I reached for it. The box was cool and solid in my grasp, and for an instant, joy surged through me. But then I looked back at him, and I realized he was watching me not for my reaction to the phone, but for something else. Something unspoken lingered in his eyes, an invitation, a request without words. The shopkeeper clapped his hands together. Well, that's settled then. I'll leave you too. He gave me a look, half a warning, half an encouragement, before turning on his heel and heading back the way we came. Panic rose in me. Wait, you're leaving? I called after him. He didn't answer. Within moments, he was gone, swallowed by the trees and the path. I turned back to the Sheikh, my pulse quickening. It was just us now, standing by the quiet river, the distant guards silent as statues, the tents fluttering in the wind. The phone weighed heavy in my hand, but heavier still was the realization that I was no longer just a boy chasing a device. I was in a world that didn't belong to me, face to face with a man whose gaze seemed to see more of me than I wanted to admit. And for reasons I didn't understand, I didn't run. The Sheikh gestured for me to follow him toward one of the larger tents. My feet felt heavy, but curiosity pulled me forward. Inside, the air was cooler, scented faintly with cardamom and with smoke. Thick carpets covered the ground, and cushions were spread around a low table where tea steamed in delicate glasses. He motioned for me to sit. I did, clumsily, still clutching the iPhone box like a lifeline. He settled across from me with the calm of someone who had never once doubted his place in the world. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence pressed against me, thick and expectant, until he leaned forward and reached for my shoulder. Gently, almost ceremoniously, he slid the handkerchief from where it rested. Then, with the same quiet grace, he eased my coat from my shoulders and set it aside. There was nothing threatening in his touch, only a gesture that felt strangely symbolic, as if he was peeling away a layer of armor I had wrapped myself in. "You don't need this here," he said softly. I swallowed. My voice came out rough. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." His lips curved slightly. "That's exactly why. Because I want to know you." For a moment I didn't understand. People usually saw my face, maybe admired it, but they never looked past it. Yet the way he said it, steady, without hesitation, made me feel like he wasn't talking about appearances at all. He poured tea into a glass and slid it across to me. I wrapped my hands around it, more for something to hold than for the warmth. "Tell me," he said, settling back on the cushions, "what is it you dream of?" The question startled me. No one asked me that. They asked when I'd get a job, when I'd grow up, when I'd stop wasting time. But never what I dreamed of. I hesitated, then spoke. "I don't know anymore. Sometimes I think it's the phone or money or respect. Just not feeling left behind all the time." He nodded slowly, listening as if every word mattered. "And do you think this phone will give you that?" I stared at the box. My first instinct was to say yes, of course, but the longer I looked at it, the hollower it seemed. Maybe it's just something I tell myself, because it's easier than admitting I'm lost. He smiled then, not with mockery, but with a kind of sadness. "You are not lost. You are waiting. There is a difference." His words settled into me like stones into water, sending ripples outward. I looked at him properly for the first time. Beneath the wealth, the fine clothes, the authority, there was something else, something softer, lonelier. "What about you?" I asked before I could stop myself. "You already have everything. What could you possibly be waiting for?" He leaned back, exhaling slowly. His eyes, warm yet weary, met mine. "I have everything people think matters. Money, power, land. But none of it stays with me when the nights are long and the camp is quiet. Do you know what it is to sit among a crowd and still feel utterly unseen?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The silence between us carried the truth. "I am a man with many around me," he continued softly. "Guards, advisors, servants. But they all look at me as a sheikh, not as a person. They want something from me, or they fear me. No one asks what I dream of." The vulnerability in his tone made my chest tighten. I hadn't expected this. I thought I would meet arrogance, maybe cruelty, the weight of someone who could bend lives to his will. Instead, here was a man confessing that all his riches could not buy him a simple, human thing, connection. I found myself leaning forward. "So, what do you dream of?" His smile was faint, wistful. "To be known. To be with someone who sees beyond the robes, the titles, the walls. To sit like this, drink tea, speak honestly. Without fear, without masks." Something shifted inside me. He wasn't what I imagined. He wasn't even what the shopkeeper had hinted at. He was kind, thoughtful, vulnerable in a way that made me forget, for a moment, how vast the distance between our lives was. We spoke for a long time after that. I told him about my small apartment, the pressure from my family, the way my friends laughed at my lack of direction. He listened without judgment, only nodding now and then, asking questions that showed he cared about the answers. In return, he shared pieces of his world, the endless responsibilities, the loneliness hidden behind ceremony, the burden of being expected to never falter. The hours slipped by unnoticed. The river outside murmured against the shore. The sun lowered into a golden haze, and still we spoke. Somewhere between the laughter at small jokes and the silences that didn't feel heavy, I realized something had begun to grow between us. Not desire, not yet. Something quieter, more fragile. An understanding, a connection. When he finally said, "Stay here tonight," I didn't hear command in his voice. I heard a request, gentle and hesitant, like someone asking for company more than anything else. And for the first time in a long while, I wanted to say yes. The first morning I woke in the Sheikh's camp, I thought it must have been a dream. The cushions, the distant sound of water, the faint fragrance of spice in the air. It was all so far from my usual mornings in my cramped room. For a moment, I reached for the phone box beside me, half expecting it to vanish. But it was there, solid and real. When I stepped outside, the Sheikh was waiting near the riverbank. He wasn't dressed in the grandeur I'd first seen. His robe was simpler, his sleeves rolled back. He smiled when he saw me, as though my presence was something expected, yet still welcome. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the spread of food laid on a low table. Dates, flatbreads, roasted meats, and tea. We sat side by side, the river glimmering in the early light, and shared the meal like old companions. Our conversation wandered through small things at first, what I liked to eat, the games I played as a child, the city I grew up in, but soon it turned deeper. He told me of his family, brothers who respected him but never confided in him, cousins who looked to him for guidance but never friendship. His father, long gone, had left him a weight of responsibilities he could never set down. In return, I confessed how it felt to watch my friends move on, jobs, marriages, travels, while I linger with nothing to show. Sometimes I feel like my life hasn't even started yet. I admitted. He looked at me with those steady eyes and said, "Then perhaps you are at the most important place of all, the beginning. You are not late. You are only waiting to know your road." Later that afternoon, he introduced me to falconry, a hooded bird perched on his arm. Fierce yet calm, its wings bound by leather straps. I flinched when it spread its wings, but the Sheikh only chuckled. "Power does not always mean destruction," he said, stroking the falcon's feathers. "Sometimes it means restraint." He didn't force me to hold it when he saw my unease. Instead, he simply let me watch, explaining how the birds were trained not for killing, but for discipline, for patience. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, we ate again by the water, lanterns flickering around us. Our laughter came easier now, lighter, and when I went to sleep that night, I found myself smiling at the thought of tomorrow. On the second day, he suggested a walk. The guards lingered at a distance, shadows among the trees, but the Sheikh and I wandered freely along the riverbank. The water rippled beside us, carrying reflections of the sky like secrets. He told me stories of his travels, deserts where the wind sang against dunes, palaces where chandeliers sparkled like captured stars. Yet, as he spoke, his voice carried a sorrow I couldn't ignore. "What's wrong?" I asked quietly. He paused, watching the river. "Do you know what it is to be surrounded by people, yet unable to show them who you are?" I thought of my own life, of hiding my fears, of pretending to be stronger than I was. "Maybe not as much as you," I said honestly, "but yes, a little." He nodded. "In my world, there are expectations. A Sheikh must be a leader, a symbol, a man of honor. To admit loneliness is weakness. To admit desire is forbidden." His words fell heavy between us. So I hide, behind the wealth, behind the smiles. But it is a cage, no matter how golden. I didn't know what to say. I only knew that in that moment, he looked less like a distant ruler and more like a man, tired, yearning, fragile. I found myself reaching out, brushing the back of my hand against his sleeve, a silent reminder that he wasn't alone, not while I was here. That night, we sat under the stars. He pointed out constellations I didn't know, telling me their names in Arabic, his voice soft, almost reverent. I told him stories from my childhood, the silly things my friends and I once believed about the moon, about fate. The sky stretched endlessly above us, and for the first time, I didn't feel small beneath it. I felt infinite, as though in speaking with him, some part of me was finally being heard. By the third day, the camp no longer felt foreign. The guards nodded when I passed. The servants smiled politely, and the river had become a familiar rhythm to my mornings. But beneath the comfort, I felt a strange heaviness. I knew my time here was short, and I wasn't sure what would remain when I left. That afternoon, the Sheikh called me into the tent. The iPhone box lay on the table, untouched since he first handed it to me. He placed his hand on it, then pushed it gently toward me. "It is yours," he said. "But understand, this is not the true gift." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, his eyes searching mine. "The phone will keep you connected to the world. But what I wish is for you to remain connected to me." His voice softened. "These days with you have been different. You speak to me like a man, not like a title. You laugh with me without fear. That is rare." My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him that I had come to phone, that I had thought only of myself, of my need to feel less empty. But now, sitting across from him, I realized that what I had found here was something I hadn't known I was searching for. Someone who saw me, who listened, who believed there was more in me than I had dared to hope. He slid the phone closer until it touched my hands. "Take it. But remember, it is only an object. What matters is what we have shared." I nodded slowly, my fingers brushing the box, but my eyes fixed on him. I thought this was what I wanted most. I admitted, but now I'm not so sure. He smiled then, a quiet, knowing smile. "Perhaps you have already found what you truly wanted." That evening, as the river shimmered under the fading sun, I sat beside him in silence. No words were needed. The bond between us had grown into something neither of us had planned, something delicate yet undeniable. 3 days had passed, but in those 3 days, I had discovered more than just the price of an iPhone. I had discovered the worth of being seen. I couldn't sleep the night after our 3rd day together. The new iPhone rested neatly on the table beside my bed in the Sheikh's tent, glowing faintly under the lantern's light. For months, I had dreamt of holding that device, imagining how I'd feel when people saw me with it, how I'd finally look like I belonged among my friends who seemed to be moving ahead in life while I stayed stuck. Yet, lying there with the phone so close, I felt strangely hollow. Was this why I had stayed? Was my heart that shallow? Or was there more that I didn't want to admit? The Sheikh had given me the phone without asking anything in return. He hadn't pressed me, hadn't demanded my loyalty, hadn't even made me feel like I owed him. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I did owe him, something greater than repayment, something more personal. The next morning, I found him sitting near the river, watching the falcons circle above the misty water. He looked calm, but there was a weight in his eyes, as if he carried a silence too heavy to put into words. "You didn't sleep?" he said softly without even looking at me. I sat down beside him, hugging my knees. "No, my head is full." He gave a short nod, waiting. That was one of the things I had come to notice about him. He didn't pry. He didn't force words out of me. He just waited, as though he knew my thoughts would eventually find their way to the surface. Finally, I whispered, "I don't know if I stayed for the phone or for something else." The Sheikh turned then, his gaze meeting mine. His eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "If it was only the phone, you would have left by now," he said. That struck me harder than I expected. Maybe he was right. Maybe the phone had been an excuse I told myself. But deep down, it wasn't enough to explain why my heart felt warmer whenever he spoke, or why my chest tightened when I thought of leaving. "I've always felt like I was nothing," I admitted, my voice cracking. "Everyone else has jobs, degrees, lives. I'm just here, jobless, useless. I thought having the iPhone would fix that, would make me look like I was worth something. But now I have it, and I feel the same." The Sheikh's expression softened. He reached out, not to grab me, not to command me, but to gently adjust a handkerchief draped over my shoulder again, almost as if reminding me of that first night. "You are more than you think," he said firmly. "A phone cannot measure your worth. Wealth cannot measure your worth. Even your job cannot. You are a person with a heart, with dreams, with a soul. That is enough." My throat tightened. No one had ever said something like that to me, not in a way that felt real. People had always told me to work harder, try more, stop being lazy. But this was different. "And you?" I asked, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You have everything. Wealth, respect, people who serve you. Do you still feel empty?" The Sheikh exhaled, his gaze drifting back to the river. "Every day," he admitted. "I live in a palace, but it feels like a cage. I host feasts, but I eat in silence. I give orders, but no one truly hears me. And I cannot even be honest about who I am. My society does not allow it. My heart does not belong to me. It belongs to their expectations. His voice cracked just slightly on the last words, and I realized that beneath his robes, beneath his power, he was just as lost as I was. Different battles, but the same loneliness. We sat in silence for a long time, the river flowing steadily beside us. I don't know what gave me the courage, but I placed my hand over his. It wasn't bold. It wasn't romantic in a dramatic way. It was simply human. And for the first time since I'd met him, the Sheikh smiled fully, a smile that wasn't polished or practiced, but raw and real. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," he said gently, "searching for meaning in things outside of me, instead of within. But you have a chance. You are still young. You can build your path without letting the world decide it for you." His words warmed me in a way no gift ever could. I realized that the iPhone wasn't the treasure these 3 days. It was his presence, his belief in me, the way he looked at me as if I wasn't invisible. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized that what I felt was not obligation, not debt. It was something softer, something gentler. I wanted him to know he wasn't alone, just as he had shown me kindness. I wanted to give him that same reassurance. That evening, as we sat by the campfire under the stars, I finally allowed myself to breathe out the truth. I think I stayed because I wanted to be here, not just for the phone, but for you. The Sheik looked at me for a long moment, and in the quiet of the night, with the river whispering beside us and the fire crackling low, he whispered back, "And I wanted you to stay, not because I had something to give, but because I had something to feel." It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand gestures, no declarations, just two people, broken in different ways, finding in each other a place to belong. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel jobless. I didn't feel worthless. I felt seen. The morning of the fourth day arrived too soon. I woke to the sound of falcons calling overhead, their wings cutting sharp lines across the pale dawn sky. For a moment, I wished time could fold itself, that the last 3 days could stretch endlessly, that I wouldn't have to think about leaving. But reality crept in with the light. My life was waiting elsewhere, messy, uncertain, but still mine. The Sheik was already awake, standing by the riverbank with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked regal as always, but there was something softer in his posture that morning, as though the weight of goodbye pressed on his shoulders. "You must return," he said when he noticed me approaching. It wasn't a question. It was an acknowledgement. I nodded, my chest tightening. "Yes, my family, my life. I can't stay here forever." For a moment, we just stood there, the river flowing between us and the silence. Then he turned toward his tent and returned with the iPhone in its pristine box. He placed it in my hands, his eyes holding mine steadily. "This is yours," he said. "But remember, this is not the true gift." I swallowed hard, fingers curling around the box. "Then what is?" His expression softened, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "The time we shared, the understanding, the bond. That is the gift I hope you will carry with you, even when this object grows old." The words pierced through me more than I expected. For weeks, I had thought about nothing but this phone, about how it would change the way others saw me. And yet now, as I held it, I felt almost ashamed of how small that desire seemed compared to what I had truly gained. "I don't know how to thank you," I whispered. "You already have," he replied. "You stayed. You listened. You saw me for who I am, not what I own. That is thanks enough." My throat burned with emotion, but I managed a small nod. The wind carried the scent of river water and wood smoke between us, and for the first time, I wished desperately that I could give him something back. Not material, but something that mattered. We walked together along the riverbank in silence, our steps slow, as though neither of us wanted to reach the place where paths would part. When we finally stopped, the Sheik turned toward me, his gaze steady, but shadowed with sadness. "Will we meet again?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He exhaled slowly. "The world is wide. Our lives are bound by duties and distance." But his eyes softened. "Stranger things have happened than two souls finding their way back to one another I tried to smile, but it wavered. I'll hold on to that. We stood close, not touching, but the air between us carried more weight than any embrace could. I could feel everything unsaid pressing against my chest. Gratitude, longing, and the ache of parting. Goodbye, I whispered. He inclined his head, the falcons circling above him like guardians. Goodbye, my friend. And with that, I turned and began walking away. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the earth itself wanted to pull me back. I clutched the iPhone tightly, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a prize. It felt like a reminder, a symbol of a story only I would ever know, a connection I could never explain to anyone else. When I finally reached the edge of the road, I glanced back one last time. The Sheikh was still standing by the river, tall and steady, watching me with those warm eyes that had seen past my doubts and my fears. The sight blurred as tears stung my vision. I walked on, heart aching, carrying not just a phone, but something far more lasting. The quiet certainty that I was no longer the same boy who had walked, desperate and jobless, into a mobile shop just days ago. Something inside me had shifted. Something inside me had awakened. And though I didn't know if our paths would ever cross again, I knew that 3 days by the river had changed the course of my life forever. When I returned home, the familiar streets felt different. They hadn't changed. Same narrow alleys, same peeling paint on walls, same noise of motorbikes and chatter, but I carried something invisible with me, something that no one else could see. At first, people noticed only the iPhone in my hand. Friends raised their eyebrows. Some even laughed in disbelief. Where did you get that? Did you rob a bank? They joked. I smiled but never answered. How could I explain that the phone was not the treasure, but the memory of 3 days by a river with a man who had seen me as more than just jobless or lost? For a while, I stared at the phone like it was fragile glass, afraid to even touch it. But slowly, I realized that it was not meant to be a decoration or a ticket to look important. It was a tool. The Sheikh's voice echoed in my mind. Don't measure yourself by a phone. So I began using it differently. Instead of just scrolling through social media to compare my life with others, I started watching tutorials, learning about design, editing, coding, anything that sparked curiosity. I applied for jobs through online portals, something I'd always avoided because I felt I wasn't good enough. And one evening, as I sat in my small room with the glow of the phone lighting my face, a message appeared. How are you? It was from the Sheikh. My heart jumped. I hadn't expected him to reach out, but a warmth spread through me instantly. My fingers trembled as I typed back. I'm fine, trying to do better. Thank you for everything. His reply came quickly. You don't need to thank me. Just live. Just grow. That will be thanks enough. From then on, our conversations became a quiet rhythm in my days. He would ask about my progress, encourage me when I doubted myself, and share pieces of his world. Photos of falcons, stories about the desert, the struggles of carrying expectations on his shoulders. We were far apart, yet somehow I felt closer to him than I did to anyone around me. Weeks passed, and something inside me shifted further. I walked with more confidence. I stopped comparing myself to everyone else. Instead, I started imagining what I wanted, not just what would make others respect me. The Sheikh's belief in me became a kind of compass. When I hesitated to apply for a job, I heard his voice reminding me, you are more than you think. When I doubted my worth, I remembered how he'd looked at me, not as someone jobless, but as someone capable of dreaming. And slowly, the world responded. I got interviews. I began freelancing online, earning a little. It wasn't much, but it was something. Each step forward, no matter how small, felt like proof that I wasn't the same boy who had once thought a phone was the key to happiness. Late at night, when the streets grew quiet, I sometimes sat by my window and scrolled back through our messages. I would wonder if he sat somewhere in his vast palace, looking at his phone too, thinking of me the way I thought of him. The distance between us was enormous, yet in those moments, it felt like nothing at all. One evening, he sent me a message that stayed with me more than any other. You don't realize it yet, but you gave me as much as I gave you. You reminded me that even in loneliness, connection is possible. For that, I am grateful. I stared at the words for a long time, tears blurring my vision. I had always thought of myself as the one who had been helped, the one who had been lifted up, but maybe, just maybe, I had given something back too. Life was still hard. Money was still tight. But now, each day felt like the start of something, not the end. And though the Sheikh and I were separated by miles of land and sea, his presence lingered in every choice I made, every risk I dared to take. The iPhone lay on my desk, no longer a symbol of desperation, but of transformation. And every time it lit up with his name, I was reminded that sometimes the things we chase in life are not what we truly need. Sometimes it's the unexpected bond, the kindness of a stranger, the trust of someone who sees us differently. That is what changes everything. For the first time in years, I felt ready, not for perfection, not for instant success, but for a new beginning. It had been nearly 6 months since that unforgettable encounter by the river. 6 months since I had walked away with an iPhone in my pocket, but something far greater in my heart. In that time, my life had begun to change. I wasn't rich, not even close, but I was no longer standing still. Freelance work had grown into a steady rhythm, and I had started saving. For the first time, I felt useful, like I was building something real. Yet, even as my days filled with work, conversations with the Sheikh remained my anchor. His messages were often brief, but meaningful. Sometimes it was a single sentence, "Have courage." Other times, he would share longer thoughts about his struggles, his longing for freedom, or memories from his hunting trips. In those moments, distance seemed to disappear, and it felt as though we were still sitting side by the river, sharing unspoken truths. Then, one evening, as I sat reviewing some work on my laptop, my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart race. "Would you come see me again? Not because of a gift, not because of need, just as a friend, or more if fate allows." I read the words over and over. Unlike before, there was no hidden bargain, no unspoken condition. He wasn't offering me anything but himself. And for the first time, I realized I wanted to go, not out of desperation, but out of choice. When I told my family I was traveling for a short trip, they were surprised but supportive. No one asked too many questions, and I was grateful. Deep down, I knew they wouldn't understand what this meeting meant to me. Even I struggled to explain it. All I knew was that my heart was leading me back to the river. The journey felt strangely familiar, though everything about me was different now. Where before I had walked nervously, clinging to the promise of a phone, now I walked with steady steps, carrying my own worth. And then I saw him. The Sheikh stood by the water, just as he had before, dressed in flowing white robes that shimmered under the afternoon sun. But when his eyes found mine, the weight he carried seemed to lift, replaced by something softer, almost relieved. "You came," he said, his voice steady but warm. "I came," I replied, smiling, but not for the phone this time. He laughed, the sound echoing across the riverbank. "Good, because this time I have nothing to offer except myself." We sat together on the same stone where we had once shared our first conversation. The air felt charged, as though the river itself remembered us. But this time, I wasn't the uncertain, lost boy I had been. I had grown, and he could see it. "You've changed," he observed, studying me with those deep, thoughtful eyes. "So have you," I said. He tilted his head, a smile tugging at his lips. "Perhaps, or perhaps I've only become more honest with you, with myself." For a while, we sat in silence, listening to the falcons overhead and the gentle rush of the river. Then, finally, he turned toward me fully. "The iPhone was never the real gift," he said. "It was only the beginning. What I truly wanted was someone who could see me, not the Sheikh, not the wealth, not the power. Just me." I felt my throat tighten, remembering those first days, how I had been so blinded by my desire for validation that I almost missed what was right in front of me. And my voice shook, but I steadied it. I thought I wanted the phone. But what I found was more than I came for. I found you. His expression softened, and in that moment, words no longer seemed necessary. The connection between us was stronger than anything we could have spoken aloud. The rest of the afternoon unfolded gently. We shared stories again, but this time without the weight of secrecy or the sharp edge of loneliness. I told him about my work, about the pride I felt in earning something on my own. He listened with genuine interest, his encouragement as steady as it had always been. In return, he spoke of his ongoing struggles, the expectations he still had to carry, the mask he still had to wear in public. But when he looked at me, I could see a spark of freedom, as though my presence alone had given him permission to breathe. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold, we walked along the riverbank. I felt the same wind that had carried our first goodbye brushing against my face, but this time it carried something lighter, hope. Do you regret it? I asked softly. Meeting me that day? He stopped walking, his gaze steady on the horizon. No, that day changed everything. It reminded me that even in the most unexpected places, connection is possible. That love, respect, companionship, they are not luxuries. They are needs. And with you, I found them. My chest swelled with emotion. I had once believed I was worthless, just another lost young man chasing material things. But here I was, standing beside someone who saw me as more, who valued me not for what I had, but for who I was. I don't know what the future holds, I admitted, but I know this. I don't want to walk it alone. Not anymore. He looked at me then, his eyes shining in the fading light. Nor do I. And in that simple exchange, we sealed something unspoken but undeniable. It wasn't about promises or grand declarations. It was about presence. It was about choice. It was about two people who had found in each other the courage to be more than what the world demanded. When night finally fell, we sat once more by the fire, just as we had months ago. The flames flickered, casting soft shadows on his face, and I realized that while everything around us had changed, the bond between us had only grown stronger. I had come once for a phone, but what I carried with me now was immeasurable love, respect, and the quiet certainty of companionship. And as the river whispered its eternal song beside us, I knew this was not an ending, but a beginning, a new chapter, a new hope, a new life together